Hey everybody, and a massively warm welcome to the first of a new era for us as Churchcentral South, our Raw Church gatherings. Raw Church is really simple, but we believe it has the potential to be really powerful as well. It is the chance to do three things together: to be together in our little groups, to grow together as we bounce off this online video, and to, if you're lucky, and no pressure on this one, and don't worry if it hasn't happened, but maybe in the coming weeks, eat together a simple meal as well. And followers of Jesus have been doing this sort of thing for 2,000 years and still do as their primary way of gathering in many parts of the world today. And so as we embrace this for at least the next 5 weeks or so before the chance for us to all gather together again, I want to encourage you to be expectant that God will use these simple gatherings around Selly, Edgbaston, Moseley, Kingsheath, Kings Norton, Wheely Castle, and even other parts of the city as well. The reason we're doing this is because the church is a community to belong to, not a video to watch. Now, I hope that you know that. I hope that you feel that. I hope that you believe that. Though we've appreciated our pre-recorded online service and the way that I think it's helped us to stick together, the way it's helped us to remember as we see all the different faces that we're part of a community together, the way that it's helped us to fix our eyes on God and remember Him and to look to Him and to engage with Him even when we're locked down, we know that a video is not enough. Actually, God's plan for His people is that they're a community to belong to be a family gathered together. And it doesn't need to be hundreds of us, okay? It doesn't need to be a big event, though we don't despise that. Actually, Jesus made an amazing promise about simple, small, seemingly insignificant gatherings of His people. He said, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am with them. See where you are, the little gathering with a few of you. It's really simple, but because Jesus promises to be with us, this can be really powerful as well. Practically, because it's new, just to help you, I'm going to explain a little bit more than we will every week, just how this is going to work. Simply play this video, keep it playing until it stops. You don't need to pause it, you don't need to do anything different, just keep this video running. And I'm going to be introducing some different elements that you'll recognize from our online meetings over the last year, some interviews, maybe a song of worship, a talk from the Bible, some different elements. But then, and this is where the real action is, okay, there's going to be space between those elements for you in the room to be the church together. I'll do my bit by giving you a bit of a steer with some questions to think about or some things you could pray into. I'll give you a bit of direction, but then it's over to you in the room to be the church together. And I encourage you to make the most of that. Yes, it'll feel a little bit new perhaps, but that's okay. We've missed this for 18 months and it's the chance to just get into it again, being the church with one another. So I encourage you to make the most of it. Also encourage you not to put loads of pressure on it and to make it something it isn't, and to feel like you've got to have a record-breaking deep chat every time that you're meant to discuss something. Just keep it simple, take the pressure off, enjoy being together. I used to say as a youth leader with our youth team that a small win is a big win. If you just have a little chat and you engage and you think about God together and you encourage one other person, that's a small win, but a small win is a big win. So keep it simple, take the pressure off, and go for it. So to get us rolling, in a moment you're going to see 5 people sharing what they've appreciated about gathering together again in person, as they've done that at our Central House services over the last few weeks. What they've appreciated about being together, and then you're going to have some space where you are to bat around this simple question: what is gained by being together? What is gained by being together as the church? And I want you to discuss that. You might want to think biblically or from your own experience, how you've been helped by being alongside other Christians in your Christian life, or maybe what you've missed most about gathering together. What is gained by being together? First, over to our 5 friends, and then over to you.
What I've enjoyed about being back together is seeing people face to face, because Zoom's great, but it's just not the same as people being in the same room all together.
What I've enjoyed about being back together is that I really like the kids' activities and I like seeing people.
What I've enjoyed about being back together is the feeling of community and being part of something bigger, being able to pray and invest in someone else's life, but as a collective in a room has been fantastic.
What I've enjoyed about being back together is being able to stay after the service, talk about normal life things face to face until we're shooed away by Eastside.
What I've enjoyed about being back together is being able to hear each other's prayers especially, but also just the other interaction that you can have in watching things together, worshipping together, and also just catching up after the service. It's been really great.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. What we're going to do now is listen to a conversation I had with Nate Martin, who is our youth worker at Churchcentral South. He's going to update us, give us some encouragement about what God's been doing in the youth work over the last few weeks, and also give us a few things to pray into. Some instructions will come up at the end with some things to pray for, and then you'll have some space to do that in your gathering. So for now, sit back, sip on your hot beverage or other beverages, and enjoy this conversation with Nate. Nate, good to see you. Do you want to tell us what's been going on in Emerge over the last few months?
Yeah, I'd love to. So with the restrictions easing as they have done recently, we've started meeting in person as much as we can. So we started with a couple of picnics in the Easter holidays, which were a great hit. And since then, we've been meeting every other week in person, and then the other week still on Zoom. We meet at the park in Worley Woods because we don't want to do Emerge restricted indoors. If we're going indoors, we want to do it as properly as we can, without masks, without social distancing. So we've been sticking to a park. Praise the Lord, we've only had to cancel once because of the weather. Yeah, we've had a better turnout in person, and it's just so great for us and the youth to be able to see each other and not be limited by Zoom.
Yes, like we are right now. Nate, normally in the summer, the young people would bundle into a coach and would be heading to Norwich for New Day, the big kind of festival that they go to. That obviously isn't happening, but I've been hearing rumours that summer plans in Emerge are afoot. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What's going on in the summer for Emerge?
Yeah, so we're putting on three, which is a 3-day event, which we couldn't think of a name for, as you may have been able to tell. it started with just calling it 3 days at Central House, and we just thought that was too much of a mouthful, so let's call it 3. But basically, it's a New Day replacement event. We don't have 6,000 people giving a couple of £100 to come, so it won't be as good as New Day or as big, but we're doing 3 days at Central House, a conference-like structure, so morning meetings, seminars, evening meeting, different games and activities, meals together, and we're really excited for it. We've got some great plans. We're doing a Trinity theme to go with 3. We're hoping to get some great speakers in, some great worship leaders, some great extra team to help us out. And we're really excited for it. And speaking of those things, if you are available the 4th to the 6th of August and you want to come to Central House to help us out, that could be for the whole thing. It could be for the mornings. It could be for the evenings. It could be just once. We need ministry team. We need people just to be there, be friendly to the youth, joining games. We need worship leaders, and yeah, lots of other people. So if you feel like helping and you've got some time around that time, get in touch with me or Becca Scott from Church Central West, and we will help you to help us.
Nate, just to finish off, do you want to give us your main encouragement from working with the young people over the last few months, and perhaps your main thing that we could pray for? And then as a church, we'll thank God and we'll pray for you guys. So yeah, what's your encouragement and your prayer point?
Yeah, so what's been really encouraging has been the turnout to our in-person events. Over Zoom, we've been averaging 6 youth turn up, and I think on our full register, there's probably about 25, maybe a few less. So we were a bit worried that we put all this planning and all this effort and get the team to travel all that way to in-person meetings for only that same 6 to turn up. And of course, that's still great. You know, it's not about the numbers, but when there are more youth, we wanted to be able to get more of them involved. And on our first event, we didn't really realize how many people were coming, and we had 18 youth show up. And then to more of our events recently, we've had more and more, still maximum being 18, but way more than Zoom. And that's been so encouraging. Some of the same youth as Zoom, but also some who we haven't seen for a long time. And it's very easy to worry when, as a youth leader and just as someone's older sibling in the church, if you haven't seen them around for a long time, you get all these concerns in your head. And loads of these youth coming back and just engaging and being like, yeah, we love Emerge. Emerge is our family, talking about their faith, talking about what God's talking to them about, being friends together, encouraging one another. It's been so exciting and really encouraging and challenging for us to remember that God's in charge and he's got them, which has been so exciting. And I think a prayer point would be for more of that. There are still a few youth who, I guess through capacity, still haven't been involved with anything yet. So just pray that maybe 3 in the summer or come September when we hopefully start meeting back to normal, that they'll be able to come back and rejoin us. Pray that as we do open up, it just happens smoothly, logistically, and in terms of well-being for everyone, because the restrictions lessening is exhausting because we haven't done it for so long. And pray that for team and youth, that we have the energy to do this right and to do it well, and to open back up and start meeting again healthily.
Nate, thank you so much. And Church Central South, there will now be some prayer points come up on the screen. And whether you know the youth, you know Nate, or whether you don't, if you're part of this church, then it's your opportunity now to thank God and to pray for our young people. So you've got a few minutes to do that, and we'll be back with something else in a minute. In a little while, we're going to be hearing from Jonathan with a talk in our Keep Going series in 1 Thessalonians. But before then, we're going to have a song of worship to Jesus together. Chris and Wumi are going to lead us. It's a song that they recorded for one of our online meetings, and we're going to be led by it again today. But I just want to give you 30 seconds to just look around the room in your gathering and work out whether you're going to be the sort of gathering that sings or the sort of gathering that meaningfully reflects on the words and is led in worship, but more through listening than singing. I'm just here to give you full permission if gathering together in a small group and then singing is just not going to really bless you. That's fine. So quickly decide now, singing or meaningfully reflecting. Either is fine. At the end, there's going to be plenty of space for you to speak out your own worship to Jesus. Tell him why you appreciate him, what you love about him. But for now, let's listen or sing with Chris and Wumi.
My mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone, Messiah still and torn alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Then on the third at break of dawn, the Son of Heaven rose again. Oh, trample death, where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. He shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints. My gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore.
Psalm 34 verse 3 says, "Come, let us tell of the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together." I want to encourage you now to do that. I'm going to give you lots of space to just tell God what you appreciate about him. God, you are like this. God, I'm so thankful that in my life you are this. God, I see in your word that you are this. Just lift him up. Tell him why you love him. And if it dwindles down a bit at moments, that's fine. Okay, don't put pressure on yourselves. But then why don't you use the time to simply pray God's blessing onto one another. Pray God's kindness and his mercy and his presence into those that you're gathered with. So lift up his name. Tell him what you appreciate about him. And if there's time remaining, pray for those you're gathered with. Over to you.
Well, good morning to you. If you are at our Central House service, or if you're in one of our Raw church gatherings in a home somewhere in the greater Birmingham area, or for that matter, if you are tuning in from slightly further afield, it is wonderful to be with you today. Now, just so you know, what we're going to be doing in a little while is delving into some really important verses in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, which grapple with the whole subject of what happens to us when we die. Now, just by way of background, you need to know this isn't some theoretical issue for the Thessalonians. It's really important because people have died among them. They're a church who are grieving. And to kind of compound matters, they're a little confused about what happens to people who die before Jesus returns. They fear that they could miss out in some way and that those who are still alive will have some kind of an advantage. And so Paul's writing to clear things up. In fact, it's one of the main reasons behind this letter. Pretty much a fifth of the letter is made up of teaching around what happens when we die. And I don't know if you've noticed, but each of the 5 chapters ends with a reminder that Jesus is going to return. Now, I don't know what you think, but I'll suggest this is highly relevant for us today as well. You know, I think one of the things that this past year has done is face us all up to the reality of our mortality. I mean, we've had these daily reminders of death in every news report, haven't we? And it's not just numbers on a graph. Many of us, I know, have seen people that are friends, family members, colleagues, people we care about, people we love, die during this time. And it's frightening. Even for those of us who are Christians and know that there is hope in death, there is still fear. It's like death is this dark door that leads to light, but it's still a dark door. And over the last 12 months or so, we've really had to confront the fact that it is coming for all of us. And so I think we need a bit of clarity around what happens when we die, every bit as much as the Thessalonians did. Because as long as we're just a bit fuzzy or muddled in our thinking about the future, we're going to be robbed of the very real hope that God intends for us to enjoy. The problem is, so many of the biblical descriptions of what's to come use pretty weird and wonderful metaphors and images because, let's be honest, it's incredibly hard talking about something that is beyond our current experience. The problem is that kind of makes it all ever so slightly confusing and gives rise to all kinds of speculation, which incidentally led one famous theologian, N.T. Wright, to say, really, all talk of the future is merely a signpost pointing into the fog. However, unpromising as that sounds, even through all the fog, I think there is still something that we can be clear on. Number one, we can be clear on the fact Jesus will come back. Right now, Jesus is with the Father, but he's not gone forever. At the end of time, he is going to come back. And then, as we're going to see in the next chapter of 1 Thessalonians, secondly, there's resurrection. Every human being, both those who love Jesus and those who hate Jesus, will be resurrected. And then thirdly, there's judgment. We will all stand before the living God who made everything and answer for the deeds done in the body, whether good or bad. And as we're going to see next time, judgment is either this beautiful thing or a terrifying thing, really depending on where you stand with God. You see, in that moment, God will shut out from his world all evil. It will be destroyed forever. And then fourthly, there's recreation. Jesus himself, at the centre of God's work, will heal and renew every one of his followers and all of creation. In a nutshell, that is what we believe about the future. Jesus will come back, resurrection, judgment, recreation. All followers of Jesus, down through history, from every culture, we all believe this. Admittedly, there's plenty we don't agree on, but we can all agree on this. Now, you may beg to differ, but I'd argue that everything else is really secondary speculation. The timing of it all, when it will happen, the chronological sequence, who's in, who's out, how we interpret apocalyptic literature, what about this, what about that? It's not that it's not important, but it's secondary to what is crystal clear. Jesus will come back, resurrection, judgment, recreation. I don't know precisely how it's all going to work out, but I do believe that. And that for me is more than enough to keep me busy in the brief moment which is my life. Now that we're clear on that, hopefully we're clear on that, let's finally turn our attention to what Paul writes here in 1 Thessalonians 4. Let's pick it up in verse 13. And now, dear brothers and sisters, we want you to know what will happen to the believers who have died, so you will not grieve like people who have no hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and was raised to life again, we also believe that when Jesus returns, God will bring back with him the believers who have died. We tell you this directly from the Lord. We who are still living when the Lord returns will not meet him ahead of those who have died. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a commanding shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God. First, the believers who have died will rise from their graves. Then, together with them, we who are still alive and remain on the earth will be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Then we will be with the Lord forever. So, encourage each other with these words. Now, the language that Paul uses here to speak of Jesus' return, it carried a whole lot of significance that I'm guessing we're probably not quite so in tune with. You see, the word he uses to describe the coming of the Lord was this politically charged word that was reserved for Caesar. It referred very much to a royal appearing. It described what happened when the emperor made a public appearance. But here Paul is subversively using that word to describe Jesus' royal appearing. So he's saying that Jesus is the world's true Lord, not Caesar. And the whole idea of meeting the Lord in the air is referring to the delegation that would be sent out to meet a special visitor. They would go outside the city walls and escort the special guest back into the city. And if it was the emperor himself, well, the entire city would go out and meet him with trumpets and fanfare to welcome him, and then together walk him back into the city where he would take his rightful place on a throne as Lord. And really what Paul's doing here is using that as a picture or a metaphor or an illustration of what Jesus' return will be like. There is coming a day when the world's true Lord, Jesus, will come back to rule, not just over a city or a region or even an empire, but to rule over all creation. That's incidentally why you go out and meet him in the air, because he reigns over the whole planet. And in this wonderful metaphor that Paul uses here, those of his followers who are still alive will go up to meet him. And for those who are already dead in Christ, which, if you remember, was the key issue for the Thessalonians, well, Paul's at pains to point out they're certainly not going to miss out. It's like they will have a seat of honour at the front of the whole procession. And then together as the people of God, we will walk Jesus back into his world, where he will take up his rightful place as king of everything, and we will reign with him forever. Now, amidst all of that, let's not miss the whole point of what Paul's doing here. Verse 18, he says, so, as a result of all of this, encourage each other with these words. Really, the entire point of this passage is to look to the future to draw hope for the present. It's for our encouragement. And so, before I finish, let me very quickly give you two simple things that I think these verses encourage us to do. Number one, we are to grieve with hope. As we've seen, back then, most people in Thessalonica believed death was the end. A common inscription carved on gravestones in the city read, I was not, I am not, I care not. Fast forward to Birmingham in 2021, and I'll suggest our culture is basically the same. Most secular people nowadays think death is the end. They might have some kind of whimsical view that there is some kind of afterlife, but in reality, most people think that when they die, well, that's it. But death is not the end. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama, at a funeral for a couple of girls who tragically died in a racist attack. He put it like this. He said, I hope you can find some consolation from Christianity's affirmation that death is not the end. Death is not a period that ends the great sentence of life, but a comma that punctuates it to more lofty significance. Death is not a blind alley that leads the human race into a state of nothingness, but an open door which leads man into life eternal. Let this daring faith, this great invincible surmise, be your sustaining power during these trying days. This is not wishful thinking. This is the real story for all who believe in Jesus. Which doesn't mean we don't grieve. Paul's point here isn't that we should be happy when people die. Don't forget, Jesus wept over the death of his friend Lazarus. And later on in the Garden of Gethsemane, immediately before his arrest, trial and crucifixion, Jesus himself sweat these drops of blood in agony over his own impending death. Paul's point isn't that we shouldn't grieve. No, it's that we can grieve in a very specific way. We can grieve in hope. We can grieve in the sure and certain knowledge that those of us who die believing in Jesus will one day, when Jesus comes back, return with him. That Jesus, who has the power to make worlds out of nothing, will remake our bodies from the ground up. And so, we grieve, but we grieve in hope. And I don't think this is merely relevant for us in death. No, as we live in a broken world and encounter pain and frustration and disappointment and struggle, even on a daily basis, we can lament the fact that the world is not as it should be, but we can do so with hope. I think we're all aware, aren't we? The gap between what we were made for and what we experience right now. And I think it's right to be upset by that gap. But nonetheless, we know that when he returns, Jesus will put all things back together again. and we will finally and forever live in a recreated world as it should be. That is our hope. So, encourage each other with these words. So first, we grieve with hope. Second, we're to live with purpose. What we believe about the future really must shape how we live in the present. It should prompt, it should push, it should motivate us to join Jesus in his kingdom work. As we've seen, it really is a distortion to see the future just as an escape from this earth. Now, what the Bible teaches is that one day Jesus will return to the earth and he will renew and heal and restore everything. Jesus, he died and rose again. And one day that will happen to you and to me and every square inch of the universe. And so what this passage does is pull us away from escapism and pushes us towards engagement. Now, let's be honest, escapism comes in many shapes and forms, doesn't it? We perhaps escape into a bottle or a pill or a prescription or a Netflix series or the arms of a lover or an ever-increasing number of hours at our job or online shopping. It's like we're running away all the time from the issues in our lives, from anything hard and difficult and painful, even from responsibility at times. We'll kind of do anything to avoid facing up to reality. But here's the thing. Having a sure and certain hope for the future helps us to engage, not escape. It equips us to press into the problems and the issues and the mess and the pain that we might otherwise have avoided, because we know that death isn't the end. And if death isn't the end, well, that changes everything. It changes not only how we die, but how we live in the here and now. It means we don't run away from relational struggles or emotional pain or the challenges in our community or the reality of death. No, we are willing to do the hard work. We lean into the disappointment of life. We press in, and as we do so, we find God there. We find life. And we find hope in Jesus. It's as though we experience something of the life to come invading the present. And so, in closing, really my appeal to you would be, may you not escape this week, but may you instead choose to engage your life, all its pain and all its beauty. Would you engage the hard places in your life that you might otherwise be tempted to avoid? Well, won't you press into it, meet Jesus there, grieve with hope, and live with purpose? And may Paul's words echo in your mind all week long. So, encourage one another with these words.
There's so much there to think about and to receive and to apply. And if you're anything like me, sometimes I just need a moment to think about it and then maybe the chance to process it. So there's going to be some questions come up and you're going to have a big chunk of time just to chat together, reflect on what God said. And if you want to use the questions, then they might help you as well. I'll be back just at the end to just give us a couple of quick bits of news, but you've got some time now to reflect together. Well, we are nearly done for today, but I just wanted to say a few quick things before we're done. Firstly, just a massive thank you for your patience and your grace to roll with this new idea. We recognise it'll need tweaking and we'll do all we can to make it week on week serve you guys better and better. But just recognise that it's a new thing, and I'm really grateful for you just getting stuck in, having a flexible and can-do attitude to gathering as the church. Well done. And we'll make it all it can be as we go forward. A few quick notices to flag up practically. We've got our prayer meeting tonight at 7:30 on Zoom, so join us if you'd like to. We were off last week, but we're back with a bang tonight to call on God together. And I also want to say that you'll notice that a lot of the life of our church is happening through our community groups right now. It's where a lot of our support is happening, a lot of our pastoral care, and also where a lot of the organisation for things like Raw Church gatherings is happening. If you're watching this and you aren't connected to a community group, as in you don't know which community group you're in, or if you're in one, please do shout out, even if it's your first time watching, and message us on the email on the screen so that we can get you connected in. Even if you only want to connect in short term, you're not sure that you want to commit to a lifelong contract, but you just want to jump in so that you can take part in the Raw Church gatherings, please get in touch. We'll do everything we can to help you gather. The last thing I want to say is just flag up a resource on our YouTube channel that Johnny has put together, all around breaking bread together, or taking communion, or the Lord's Supper, or whatever you want to call it. This is something that as a church we believe is really important, really serious, really powerful and profound, But we also believe it works best when done in a relational way that's not overly formal, perhaps in a home, with family in the church, perhaps over other food. And because of that, Raw church gatherings provide an amazing opportunity for us to take communion together in the way that we think the Bible teaches that you can. But if you're anything like me, it can all get a little bit religious when we take communion. It can all get a little bit weird, and we sort of become super formal, and it can be a bit strange. And so Johnny has made this most brilliant practical video to help us practically think how we can do this in a way that's both profound and powerful, but not overly heavy or intense. I really encourage you, if you're going to be hosting one of these Raw church gatherings, or you're interested in how we could do that together on Sunday mornings for the next few weeks, please check out that video, and then I encourage you to go for it and to utilize the top tips that he gives and to break bread in your homes over the coming weeks. We are done, and I hope that you have a great rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you soon.